welcome to Heartland Knits and Sews. My name is Vicki, otherwise known around the internets as Heartland Knits, and this is my channel where I talk about all the things that I love to do. Now, I'm sitting outside on my screen porch, so I apologize if there's any traffic noise. Also, airplane noise because there's an air show in town this week, and I never know when big planes are going to fly over. Anyway, I have been thinking forever, for just months and months, since last winter, about restarting my channel. And somebody mentioned it to me on my Instagram a couple weeks ago, and I just thought, yeah, I should do that. And then I'm just back now from knitting camp, Meg Swanson's knitting camp, and thought, I have things to talk about. So the big change in the channel is that I've kind of changed up the name a little bit from Heartland Knits to Heartland Knits and Sews, because especially lately I have been sewing more than knitting. But going forward, what I want to do is kind of try to alternate episodes, one about knitting, one about sewing, and try to keep them separate. Just as a if there are any seamstresses watching, this is me made dress. This is a vintage shirt dress. It was my very first kind of toile that I made years ago, and at that point it was a little big. Now it fits just fine. Anyway, today is all about knitting. So last weekend I was away in Marshfield, Wisconsin, the middle of the state, and attended Meg Swanson's knitting camp. It hasn't been held since the before times. There are 3 sessions of camp now, and I go to Camp 3, otherwise known as Off-Timers. It was wonderful to be all together again. I have seen a few of the participants in between times, but we've not been all together. And we did go, a few of my friends and I went up and early. Officially it starts on Thursday, kind of at dinner time. We went up on Tuesday. They both had really long drives. I didn't have a long drive. I only live about 2 hours away, but I went up anyway just because it was fun to kind of be there at the very beginning, and then a whole bunch of other friends came in on Wednesday, and we had a whole day sort of just to ourselves, and we sat outside and knit, and it was a really kind of wonderful little pre-camp. But then Thursday came around, and it was almost just like it felt like forever since we'd had camp, but then yet it felt like everything just kind of fell into place and went smoothly, just like it always did. There were maybe a third, there's about 60 people in the room. I think we had a few that had to drop out at the last minute, but about a third of them were brand new people. There were a few that had never been to camp before, but the other new ones to my session had come from different ones, had been to different camps previously. But it was great to have kind of new people there, and Meg, I don't know, everybody else ages, she just doesn't age, and was there and just as gracious and kind as ever. But I thought I would kind of walk you through a few of the things. I'll try to put pictures in as I can. So I didn't do kind of a whole lot of shopping there, but when you go, you do get a little bag, and it has their kind of knitting camp logo, and yeah, so we got that. And then helicopter. And then you can order one of these early, and then it's waiting there for you. But you could order t-shirts or sweatshirts, and I got a hooded sweatshirt, and it was waiting there, and so that will be good. And then when you come, there's a folder at your place. You can write your name on it. And inside of it are, there's like a collection of most of these, I think most of these were hat patterns, but they're small projects. But also there's like a list of all the participants, and you get a little like pad of paper and a pen, and yeah, so that is at your place. Very kindly, at each of our places was a little knitter's journal. This is a little book that Schoolhouse Press publishes. There are two different covers, but they're both the same inside. And they have lined pages and charted graph pages, so you can chart things out. And then they also have little plain pages with little sayings by Elizabeth Zimmerman, and just all kinds of little things. So one of these was at each of our places. I've had one of these books before and was actually thinking about getting a new one. I need to do better documenting projects, knitting projects and sewing projects. Back in the 90s, I was very faithful at filling in just a little journal all about my knitting projects. I wrote out whole patterns in there. My glove pattern that I use to this day is in there, and I looked back at it one day at how wonderful it was to have all of that. I had little pieces of the yarn that I use in the ball bands, and I need to do that. I was really happy to see this little book. And that's kind of what you get when you go there, and you, Thursday night is dinner, and then you run in, or if you're me, you run in and get a place and for all your friends. And so we kind of sat in our usual place, and then after that there's a little store that they bring things over from Schoolhouse Press, some yarns, some patterns, and things, just so you can see them. They didn't have as much this year, just because they didn't, I think at the beginning they didn't know that if they were going to be able to keep everything there kind of through the midweek. The one thing that I did buy was this little sweater pattern. This is Meg's little publication. It's called Wool Gathering. It comes out twice a year, and I used to have a subscription, but then it lapsed, and I didn't get it again. But this came out in March of 2022. This little Henley Fair Isle yoke sweater, and I've always wanted to do it. And a friend of mine and I think are going to do one, and so I picked up the pattern. This is available online as a PDF. I will put a link to it down in the description box, but I really do like to have the hard copies. And then the other thing that I bought was yarn to make a hat. My friend Kim and I, we usually sit across from each other, and about 10 years ago we started racing. We would knit a hat during camp, and we would race to see who could come out, who would come out first. And she used to be a production knitter. She knits fast. I think I've beat her once. And then the last time we had camp, 2019, there was somebody new. She was her first time at Off Timers, and she had just happened to be making the same hat that we were. And we counted her in on the race. I don't know if she knew she was racing us. She beat us both, but this year she was there, and so she got in on the race. And we had decided beforehand, because there are all kinds of hat patterns in that little leaflet that we got in our folder, but we kind of have done all those hats already, because we race every year. And so we called Cully Thursday morning, I think, and to ask him if, what the hat patterns, if there was going to be a hat pattern, what it was going to be, and just so we could plan out a little bit. And then we had done kind of all of those hats, and so he had come out. Now Cully is Meg's son. He had come out with a yoke sweater think last winter sometime, that has these sort of swirls, like short rows that are done as swirls. And then he wrote out a hat pattern with the same kind of swirls, just a smaller pattern to see, just to give you sort of a little taste of what it would be to make the sweater. And so we decided to do his pattern. It's called the Ebb and Flow hat. And so this is my little hat. It's all done with short rows. And I won the contest this year. This was not a good, it's a fun hat to do, but it was not a good hat to do when you're racing, because there are all of these garter ridges that you have to do, and which just take longer than just plain stockinette. Now the yarn I used, I also bought at camp, and this is Blackberry Ridge fingering. I think this was marine blue, and the gray is like 10% gray. They have different amounts, 10% or 20% to make it lighter or darker. And yeah, and so I have pictures I will put in of all of us with our hats, and then Cully with the hat. He put on the hat from the sample hat. Now, I didn't do gauge or anything with this because I just picked up the yarn and had needles that I usually use for hats. And I think I did this on 2s and 3s, 2s for the garter section and 3s for the stockinette section. So it's a little bit big on me, but and obviously it needs to be blocked out. But yeah, it was really fun. So I finished this Saturday morning. We started 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday morning, and then knit. The other things that I knit on when I was there, I will kind of go over in another episode, kind of bringing up to date on what I'm currently knitting on and re-knitting on. We also have a raffle, and the money goes to charity, and so people can bring things, and we all buy tickets and put our tickets in. And I was lucky enough, I won something. To be honest, I put most of my tickets, I think I put all but 3 tickets in one little bag to get this yarn, and it is this lace weight. It's this really pretty light pink, and it's merino lace. It's 1,375 yards. Is the yardage, and it's merino. I've had this once before, way back when I had started knitting lace. I had a skein of this, and I knit a Hazel Carter shawl. So I'm thinking I might be casting on a Hazel Carter shawl with this. So also my view of bringing yarns into the house, because I'm trying not to build more stash, is if yarn comes into the house, I need to cast on for it right away. So I will be casting on this fairly soon. I'm thinking of a Hazel Carter shawl. I have a few of them. I'm not sure. The yardage should be enough. I'm going to look through my queue on Ravelry, because I have a bunch of shawls listed. That I might just not be remembering, that use a really thin, lightweight. So this is a really, really thin yarn. It's 2/25. And then also a friend of mine who I've been knitting Estonian shawls, and we were talking last year about them, and she kind of got a bug to knit to knit some Estonian shawls, and so she sent in an order to Estonia, and then I don't know if she doesn't like knitting them, but anyway, she brought some of the yarns that she bought at that point. They're the this Hea, Hea, and this is a 30/2 yarn, and this is 1,500 millimeters. But she had 2 skeins of this. She said she was going to make like a big, I don't know, square shawl or something, and decided against that, and so asked me if I wanted one. And I didn't. I have a lot of this yarn, but I don't have this gray. They don't often have this light gray for sale, and so I got it. So what I'm going to do with this, because I have another shawl that I really want to start, a Estonian shawl that I want to start. So I'm going to trade and put this one on the shelf and take a different color, because I know there is probably a shawl that I really will be perfect for this light gray, but the one that I want to do next is not that shawl. So I'm going to trade. So that's like an even trade. So I'm not putting stash into the yarn room. So yeah, so that's what I got. All in all, it was wonderful to be back. It was wonderful to see all my friends, and we have like tons of pictures, and yeah, it was really the best weekend. We did and then we did show and tell. So I wasn't planning on doing show and tell as like a standing up alone and showing what it's been 4 years, and it always makes me super nervous. And I just thought, I don't know if you can hear the plane. I'll stop until it ends. So I wasn't going to do show and tell at all, and this year, sometimes it's different kind of every year. Sometimes they let you sign up for the day that you want to do it, and sometimes they just kind of go by the list of names, alphabetical or whatever, according, and that's how you get called. This year they let you sign up, and I didn't sign up at all because I don't need the extra anxiety. I brought a bunch of stuff to show, and mostly just my friends, like, come, you want to come see my stuff. And so it was, I had most of it together in a basket, and then we had a couple of group projects, and I planned on doing those because that's different. You're not just standing up alone talking about your knitting. For the first day on Friday, we had extra time at the end of show and tell. So it was scheduled to be right after the morning break and before lunch. That was the show and tell time. And we ended, everybody had shown their things that had signed up. We had 15 minutes to spare. And so Amy, who kind of MCs the whole show and tell, said if somebody wants to do it, that, signed up a different day, wants to do it today, come up. And I think somebody did. I'm not sure. I don't even remember who that was, but I thought, okay, well, this is my chance. I'm going to go get my stuff. My hotel room was on the first floor. It was just down the hall. So I ran down the hall and got my basket because I brought a whole bunch of mittens that I had knit over these last years. And they were all on this string that, if you're on my Instagram, you've seen this string with clothespins that I usually hang my bras on, my hand-sewn bras on during the winter, and I add one every week. And I had taken that and I had clipped all the mittens to it, and they were all in a basket. So I, came running into the room, and that I was ready, that I would do show and tell. So I don't know if it was because I hadn't signed up, so I didn't have that sort of buildup of anxiety. And also, what I had done is I had written down on a piece of paper all of the particulars about the mittens, if they were from a pattern in a book, or if they were my own design, what yarn I used, the needle size I used, and like all of that was written down. And so instead of having to talk on the mic and explain everything, I just handed that piece of paper to Amy and said, you read it, and then I could just walk and hold up the mittens and just walk, and it was so much less stressful. So I walked to the back of the room and then up to the front, and I went over and showed Meg so she could see close up. And then there was a kind of an empty table behind where I was sitting, and so I had them laid out then for like the rest of that day. So if people wanted to see them up close, they could. If you guys want to see them and have me explain each one, let me know, because I could do that I can do that in an episode sometime. So show and tell is wonderful. It's always so inspiring to see. I'm going to stop till that plane goes away. But it's always so inspiring to see what people have knit, and it's you get some really good, patterns, ideas, and things that you don't, haven't seen anywhere. Yeah, so that was my great weekend. It was the first time I was away, really. I was gone for a whole week. Yes, I was worried about my roses. So if you're not on my Instagram, you don't know, I have a lot of roses. I have over 100, and we have had the driest year. I think in June we had an entire ½ inch of rain the entire month, and we did have a little bit of rain. So I knew the ones in the ground were going to be fine, but I have several big containers that I didn't want to lose. And so a friend of mine came over on the Friday and watered for me, so they were all okay. I think we did have a little rain. I think we did have a little rain over the weekend, but it was all fine. But I did miss them, and actually went around the side of the house. I parked on the driveway, went around the side of the house, and looked at other roses before I even came inside. But yeah. So anyway, that is what I wanted to talk to you today. Now, like I said at the beginning, I am going to kind of be alternating knitting and sewing episodes. So maybe the next one, I don't know, it'll be sewing. But I do want to go and show you the things that I am knitting on right now. So that will be another time. So if you want to be sure to see it, be sure that you're subscribed. And then you can also click the little bell to be notified when new videos go up. But until I see you next time, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.